All right. Today I'm here with Ben, the spiritual fuckboy Duffy.
Yes, sir. That's me.
You have many stories that you live by. Recently licensed therapist, Naropa graduate, Playgirl model, Burning Man enthusiast.
Oh, yeah.
And student of Buddhist teachings.
Yeah.
And so many more. And I've gotten to hear your story and sit behind this desk right here and listen as I produce your podcast. So it's time and long overdue for us to jump into some of these topics.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's cool to be on your show. And I like you said, you're always producing my content. I always wonder, I'm curious what Yehuda thinks about this, because I go on some crazy rants, as you know. So yeah, I think this will be fun to have an opportunity for you to ask those questions, being so intimate with, so many of my conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just pick up where we left off in our conversation earlier about the parallels that exist between Judaism and Buddhism. There's so many people that stereotypically are raised Jewish and then go follow Buddhism because it aligns in so many ways. I know someone who ascended the ranks in Buddhism and whatever. I don't know exactly how it works, but they became very learned and very deep in their practice. And at some point, one of the teachers said, "Are you Jewish?" And because he kept asking a lot of questions, and he said, "Are you Jewish?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And the teacher said, "Go home, go to your roots." And so
I love that.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people, and that's just one story, that have gone both ways, Jubus as we call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's dive into it.
And so you are obviously Jewish. I am not. You, I'm sure, have a more intimate understanding of the Jewish tradition. And like you said, there are so many well-known Buddhist teachers today, like Jack Kornfield, Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg. Basically, the original pioneers who brought Buddhism to the West are all Jewish for some reason. And it's interesting. I'm really curious about those parallels. I've heard about them a little bit from one of my favorite authors and Buddhist teachers, Shinzen Young, who really talks about this notion of nothingness in Judaism and how it overlaps with this notion of emptiness in Buddhism. And I think for me, what I heard from that story, when the monk is like, go back to your roots as a Jew, for me, the deepest insight that I got out of Buddhism is this understanding of what we call in the West emptiness. And emptiness is not such a great word for it because it gives people like a nihilistic, meaningless tint off the bat. People have also translated it as boundlessness. And the Pali word, which I think is the best, just because there's some words that we can't directly translate to English, as you probably know with Hebrew and English. But the term is shunyata in Pali, and I think it just really accurately describes this emptiness. And when we come to this point of understanding the emptiness of all perception, and this seems like very dramatic for people at first because we're living in a world where we just assume that appearances, the world we experience, is objectively real. And we are forgetting that we are actually playing an integral role in creating it through stories, beliefs, narratives. This includes a sense of self, my sense of you, other, my sense of the world is constructed, co-created. And we create these conceptual frameworks and then we seem to project them onto the world. And when we recognize absolutely always that we can never escape a fabricated conceptual framework, no matter what, you're going to be living in one. Even the conceptual framework that this is not a fabricated conceptual framework, this is really real. That's still a fabricated conceptual framework that you're saying this is really real. So when we recognize that it's completely inescapable, that we can't get away from our constructions, then you recognize it all must be empty. You just have to ask the question, then which way is the real way that things are? And you will never come to that place because you have to recognize it's always going through the lens of your mind. So at that point, just to bring it full circle to this story, we recognize that our path is empty, our sense of self is empty. And from this radical freedom that comes from that emptiness, you can start to inhabit any narrative that you want. And this is where I think Buddhism, at its roots, in the most mystical sense, in the least dogmatic sense, is open to any other religion, any other worldview, anything you want to believe. Because all it's doing is granting you permission to really believe that, recognizing that it's all fabricated and that's okay. And actually, it's all fabricated and also all completely real. Because in order for our mental fabrications to not be real, we would have to be able to point to something that is not fabricated. And according to the Buddha's teachings, you will never find that thing. You will never find it. So at that point, reality and our imagination, our conceptual constructs start to merge and become one. And then we can really, again, inhabit something like Judaism, like our roots, like whatever, paganism. It could be, if you're, into it, atheism. I don't think anyone who would have discovered emptiness for themselves would like really settle on that.
Yeah.
But leaning into more enchanted experiences and recognizing that emptiness just gives space for all of them.
Okay, so I want to play a fun game here. I came up with about 4 different concepts in Judaism just from what you just said.
Yeah.
I want to unpack them. And I want to use different language to explain them. Let's use Buddhist language to explain them, because one thing that I feel like we're very limited in these conversations is language. Taking these grand concepts that are bigger than words and reducing them to words.
Yeah.
The idea of emptiness, it doesn't do justice to what you're trying to describe.
Right.
And other words that I'm going to use in a moment won't do justice to what I'm going to describe.
Yeah.
But since you and I have a different set of vocabulary to describe these same concepts, let's connect our vocabulary and try and give more of a layered depth to these ideas.
And I love that you said that, because I think with a lot of these really big ideas, you need to make that like claim first, which is like language is going to fail us here. When we're getting to these radically deep truths, it's extremely difficult to actually describe them verbally. They're things that, I'm sure in the Jewish tradition, as in the Buddhist tradition, like you have to experience it for yourself. And that's deeper than conceptual thoughts. So just prefacing this conversation with that we're going to try our best to use language and actually to find, I think, the overlap here. Because if we want to actually like investigate what is the ultimate truth here, if that is, a topic of debate or where our desire is leading us, then let's try to find where these concepts really overlap. And again, we're like the Pali word and the Hebrew word, different words, are pointing to the same thing, to find those deeper, those overlapping truths where it's like, yeah, maybe, Israel versus India, like they came up with different words, different language, different culture, but they're pointing to a universal truth here. So I'm excited to learn.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to share, and I'm excited to hear your perspective on it. The first one that let's jump into the first one, and it's some might say it's the thesis of Judaism, and I'll focus on one word here, but the phrase is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, and it's kind of a declaration of the idea that God is one, that there is no parts to God that you can split, meaning you can't say that there's this part of God which is separate from another. It's like that goes against what God means. And so when you look at it from the zoomed out perspective, everything within existence is part of the, let's say, mind of God.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to another statement here, which is Ein od milvado. There is nothing but him. Him just being the right, just a pronoun we can use, but it's not limited to him. There's nothing but this oneness.
Yeah.
And so if you look at any situation, if you look at any person, if you look at anything in the universe, it is not separate in any way from God. Now, it might be concealed in a way, meaning the inner light that is God's essence may be hidden beneath many, many, many layers, shells, so to say. But at its core, it is part of God.
Yeah.
And so that answers a lot of questions to why is there good? Why is there evil?
Right.
It's not that we're saying that the worst things that are happening in our world are all God.
Yeah.
We're saying that God's essence is hidden within them in some form.
Yep.
They may be it may be concealed between layers of darkness that are really painful and real, but it's not separate from God.
Yeah. Yeah. That is beautiful. And there's so many just synapses connecting here for me, where at first when you said just God is one, basically. Is that accurate? God is one for the first part?
Yeah.
Okay. So it reminds me of non-duality. So one of those traditions in the Indian subcontinent is Advaita Vedanta, where they say the world, this place is non-dual. When they say that, they mean it's not two. And they actually don't say the word one, because when you imply one, there must be a zero relative to it to balance it out. And they just say not two. There can't be two here. So I think there's a direct correlate there with non-duality. And also it makes me think about the role of, how do I put this? What we would call human imagination. Human imagination and our experience of reality and our experience of God are not separate. And can they all actually blend and merge into one thing? And can we recognize that within ourselves? And when you said darkness is actually not a face of God, in a sense, it's not the act of God. I think I heard this in a podcast, and I don't know what the context was, what tradition it came from, but they said there are those that look directly at the light, and I would say that is the light of God, recognizing this is the kingdom now. The kingdom is within us. And recognizing that we have the potential as creators to build experience from the Buddhist lens. And so there's those that look directly at the light and they see it, and then there's those that actually turn away from the light of God. And it's like there's something that where they just, and who knows why, it could be part of the theater here, but they forget. They're like, oh, this can't be the kingdom of God. Look at all the evil. Look at all the suffering. There's no way. There's no way. And then those demons, that darkness from those that are turned away, that's what spawns, like the Buddhist term would be greed, delusion, ignorance. Because we're actually not seeing things clearly, we're turning away from the light. And I think there's so many parallels here that are, so interesting.
Yeah. It's almost as if when someone turns away from that light, they're not seeing darkness. They're seeing their own shadow. From the light of God casting upon them, it looks like a dark figure, but there's still light in play here.
Whoa.
Right?
Yeah. It's a beautiful image. And I'm thinking too, like, just running with that image, when I turn away from the light behind me, I'm seeing my own shadow. And what is that shadow? It could be my form. Whose form? Maybe this small separate self. I got shoulders and a head. Oh, that's what I am. The dark shadow says so. Not recognizing the background is illuminated by what? The light of God. And again, it relates to Buddhism, where one of the primary delusions, the ways we don't see reality clearly, is actually by identifying with only this ego. That's like, it's not balanced. It's not actually true. Like, recognize that's a story. That's a belief. And I would love to get into how we experience that ego and why it feels so real to us, because it's viscerally felt in our bones. That's the thing. It's not conceptual in the way we usually think of conceptuality. This ego, it's like it's known. And the question is why? And I think it's so interesting. And the answer really is actually very simply fear. When there's fear present in the psyche, in the being, you can feel contractions physically, like in your stomach, in your chest, in your throat. And there's contractions present in the psyche and in the mind as well. And what happens when there is fear present, who is afraid? Who is afraid? There has to be a me, an I, some sort of being that is afraid. And when we feel that tightness in our chest, it's very intense feeling physically. And then we have this contraction of the mind, which is like, oh, this thing called me. I see a tiger in the woods and I'm terrified because little me doesn't want to die. And the mind shrinks in that fear. It tightens up and actually solidifies this separate self. As, oh, this is what I really am. I can feel it. Duh. And obviously, so there's something pragmatic there. If there's a lion in the forest, if I don't feel fear and try to like dip and get away from that thing, it's probably not going to pan out very well. And evolutionarily, it's just not going to work. So fear is not bad, except that experience of fear and how it shrinks and contracts the psyche and the body. We just need to recognize that and be like, that doesn't mean objective truth. that means actually, okay, creation is trying to preserve this thing it's put a lot of energy into already, this form. But that doesn't mean it's you objectively. And we can start to see the mechanisms of mind, i.e. fear, and how that constructs this feeling of a separate self. And how in order to actually know liberation from the ego, we have to know liberation from fear. And that means becoming very intimate with it and loving fear, the direct experience of it, recognizing what is fear. Like we just have this experience of, oh, it's so scary. I don't know what it is. And with that, usually a lot of people don't know how to hold that. We actually don't have the tools, the equipment. We're not taught, how do I hold fear? When in actuality, it's just a combination of body sensations and like thoughts in your mind. And when we can hold that, that's when it starts to alchemize. And the holding is the loving of the fear that turns it from fear into, it's hard to say, more like openness.
Yeah, I love that. I come to the ocean and what it represents and the analogies that it gives us as a perfect way to understand this. You've heard like the typical explanation of like, oh, like you're a drop of water in the vast ocean. Yeah. It's not that you're not made out of the same material. It's that when you're a droplet falling from the heavens into the vast ocean, you're made up of the same oneness that is the grand ocean, but you're not the same as it. You have that perceived separateness. Yeah. And the fear, another ocean analogy, completely different. The fear is actually, I have a poem I want to use to explain this. Please. I wrote this down the other day and it just feels very fitting.
Is it from you?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I wrote this and it's helped me find some beauty in what fear really is. I am the ocean waves that come crashing down ever so elegantly in the waltz of the midnight storm. I do not drown in their waters. I am their tumbling, and I am their white noise song.
Beautiful. I love that. And that's a shift in perception. That's a shift in story. And that's what I want to teach, is actively doing that. So bringing about different experiences through shifting our story. When I know I'm the waves crashing down, what am I afraid of? And for me, something really dramatic dawned on me when I was like, examining this thing called death. And it's been this like progression of really not just accepting it, but in that acceptance and that love of death, you start to see through it, actually. You start to see it for what it is. And it's not as solid as we think. Again, the fear is what contracts around this big, scary, abstract idea called death and makes it seem real. And for me, it's recognizing that, and again, in a non-dual sense, in a God is all one kind of sense. If I get hit by a bus, I get cancer, whatever happens, if I were to die, who is taking this life? And whose life is this? Like, if you want to take this form, this thing called Ben, this body and mind, please take it anytime. I trust your decision. I trust your will because I know what you are and I am. And I know those two things are inseparable. And at that point, what happens is this radical trust and this radical openness. When death comes, because I'm so cool with it, I recognize it's not an end. I recognize what I am. I'm comfortable, in that phase of life. Again, when the clouds collect and the water droplets fall, that's where we are right now. But like when we head to the ocean, either we, fall as snow in the mountains and we go through the river, we end up in the ocean. I'm cool with all of it. And I trust. And that's the thing. That is a story. From the Buddhist lens, that's a story that then we would call a skillful story that leads to a radically different experience than this cage of identifying only with the separate self. And that's the thing. We can have both. We can have it all. We can identify with the separate self, the ego. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a beauty that comes through the story of the ego that we can't taste if I'm only living as the ocean. And that's the thing. But can I have the flexibility of mind to really inhabit that story of being the ocean? And also to have a story that I'm beyond both of those things, beyond conceptuality as well.
Yeah, if our story is I am the sailor in the dangerous waters and any wave could come crashing down and or capsize my boat
right
at any point, then that story is fear-based.
Right.
It's protect the boat, protect the ship. But if the story is I am the the beautiful waves crashing together and this storm that is just an expression of creation. If you are that chaos of the storm and not someone trying to ride through it, then man, how much more of a beautiful story are you telling?
Dude, exactly. Not just telling, but living.
Right.
That story, like, we are inhabiting stories. We are walking through stories. Always. That's what we need to recognize. Always, always, always. Like I said, you can never get to an experience where there is not a story operating. And all of those stories, if you pay close attention, are going to be equally fabricated. And that's the radical freedom of emptiness, of shunyata, is, oh, I get to pick not just the stories in my mind. Yes, it starts there a lot of the time, but the world I'm living in, the world I'm experiencing, the sense of self I experience. Am I confident? Am I not? What story is operating? Do I feel connected to God or do I not? What story is operating? And that's the thing. And interestingly, like you said, I want to point to that analogy of a sailor who's getting wrecked by waves, and naturally there's fear there. And what happens with fear is it actually functions as a feedback loop, sort of like a cramp in the psyche, where when there's fear present, let's just say we feel ourselves to be this scared little thing, this scared little person. That's all that I am, and let's save this life. And when we identify more with that separate ego, when we believe in that contracted nature, the contracted experience of mind, actually there can be more fear tends to occur. So when I feel small and afraid, then I've, in a sense, solidified myself, and I've made this solid, real thing that could really die and really lose everything that it loves. And as a result, we tend to cause more fear. So it's like this feedback loop that leads to a cramp in the psyche where everything is so tight and solid and real. And let's just put it like this. You can't fear something that isn't real. And when you see it for yourself, it all starts to fade away. The Buddha has a beautiful story about an arhat, which is basically an enlightened being, not a full Buddha, because there's like levels to this shit, according to Buddhism. Yeah. But an enlightened being who had developed what they call siddhis, which are these supernatural powers, going through time and space, going through walls, miraculous healing, and this is talked about in various traditions. But the arhat was talking with the Buddha, and the Buddha was like, he's not fully enlightened yet. And the Buddha was like, manifest a tiger for me. So the arhat does that. He manifests a tiger out of the jungle. The tiger comes out, and the dude is terrified, and he runs away. And the Buddha's like, see, I told him. He's not fully enlightened. Because what he's falling for, again, he's falling for fear. He's falling for this fabrication of his own mind. Recognizing what we're afraid of is not objectively the tiger. It's the fear of my own mind. It's, again, we cannot escape our own minds. And if we were to see that everything is truly mind, and when I say that, it's not our mind, it's the mind. You could say the mind of God, from a different lens. Mm-hmm. Recognize there's nothing to be afraid of, actually. Where could you go? Again, can you alchemize that fear? Can you lean into, again, that cramp in the psyche, sort of like a massage? You start to massage that fear by leaning into it. And that's the only way to loosen that cramp, to like put your consciousness so deeply into the fear, into the pain, that it actually starts to move all of that energy. And you start to recognize, oh, wait, it's not as real as I thought. It's like a magic show. That's actually another line that the Buddha said when he first became enlightened. It was like like magician, you have been seen, and your house will never be built again. So recognizing how this place is built, and recognizing it is sort of like a magic show. Mm-hmm. And we forget, oh, wait, I made this experience. For instance, fear is built on stories, that there's a real me here, that if that dies, that's definitely bad. Let's just say, although that seems obvious, that is actually a story. And we can start to work with that to go to really profound depths. And that's what I want to bring to people here this culture in the West, which is the depth and the radicality that this goes. This is what I call existential liberation. And I say that because that's actually what it is. Like when I do sessions with people, I don't call it coaching because it's not that. Like we are changing our whole experience of what existence is. Whole experience. And coming back to that radical agency where we have the power to choose the stories, to recognize the mechanisms of mind that are building experiences that seem solid, that seem real, but actually, oh, it's all still smoke and mirrors in my mind. Again, the play of contraction and expansion, really, of fear and love. This is what builds worlds. So,
I want to touch on your tiger story.
yeah, please.
It's funny to me that you use that example, because it feels as though we all have the ability to summon the tiger. And on a deeper level of consciousness, let's call it a soul level, we do summon the tigers.
Wow.
Even though we may run away at first, it's as if the soul wants to ascend higher. So we will always summon the tiger, even if the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time we run away. We want to be able to summon the tiger and face it, because then we've grown, we've moved higher.
Fire.
And it's the human condition at some level, because we're always getting ourselves into situations that end up being painful, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much suffering in our own lives that may seem self-imposed, but then once we overcome it, we realize that we needed to go through that to get to where we were going, and to become who we were going to become all along. Even though we were the ones who summoned the tiger to begin with,
bro. And so this makes me think, one Tibetan teacher, Andrew Holacek, says the whole spiritual path in most traditions actually could be summed up as learning how to relax and open to life and what's coming through you emotionally, spiritually. And what I see with the tiger story, and you're so right, like we can apply that metaphor to our lives in relationships. For instance, you happen to, get involved with a girl and you really fall for her, but actually she just doesn't treat you right, or she ends up cheating on you. And it seems like, again, in an interesting sort of inexplicable kind of way, creation is bringing us experiences that induce suffering to show us where we're still hooked. What can I not accept? What can I not lean into? What am I afraid to, again, connect with? And again, the more that we resist that fear, that pain, the more that it's going to seem to manifest in interesting ways. So this almost seems like, in a trippy sense, like the refinement of consciousness. Where we're learning how to let go in deeper and deeper ways, recognizing the world cannot hurt you. It's your mind, and specifically your own resistance to what's happening. So the girlfriend cheats on me. Okay, there's pain, there's grief, there's loss, yes. But how much of that pain and suffering that is associated with getting cheated on is exponentially increased through my own resistance. And my resistance to that happened and it shouldn't have. That happened and I can't handle it. That happened and it's unacceptable. It doesn't fit the story of my life. That resistance is the suffering.
Yes. And
we have to recognize that although it seems like this big painful event, what is making it so painful is your own resistance to it. And recognizing that the pain that we are experiencing is inextricably interwoven with our resistance or the lack thereof. So when we can actually get rid of our resistance to life, and again, some girl cheats on you, whatever, you lose a job, you're in physical pain, you break a leg, like we are being taught how to let go, how to open in these really dramatic ways, because it's that openness that allows the light to come through in more beautiful, miraculous ways.
Was hydrogen suffering in the process of ascending the elements of the periodic table and becoming iron?
Whoa.
I'd be willing to say that not in the same way that human beings do, because as consciousness is refining itself in this stage, we are aware of consciousness. And it's a different experience than when the primary elements that built our universe grew and expanded in their form to become what they are. And we're made up of those same elements. We are made up of stardust. Everything in our bones and our body is made up of those same elements. And it's just grown in a new way, and it started to refine itself in a new way. But because we're so aware, we're watching it happen, it's terrifying at points.
Yeah. And because we identify with this separate self. And I think I just want to highlight what you just said, recognizing that we're made of stardust. We are, in a sense, the Big Bang, still banging right now. Like, that's, again, I want to just highlight, that's a perception shift. Recognizing that all of it's empty. And for me, when you said that, there's like, oh, I feel different. And when it starts to feel different, you're entering a new world.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to, again, cultivate intentionally, working with narrative and story to do that. And again, from this ground of emptiness, recognizing the world is built again through certain belief assumptions, stories. We get to pick, and also not just the story that shifts our perception, like you just spoke to, but also recognizing what causes the world to seem real. Again, so if this is like basically, as I think it was Thoreau said, or Walt Whitman, somebody who said, reality is but a canvas for your imagination. It's empty. You can make it whatever you want. And recognizing then, how does suffering come to be? How does my pain, my anguish, my torment come to be? And actually recognizing, if it's all empty, it's made in your mind. So how am I making it? And what we find is actually through resistance. It's so interesting in an extremely deep way. And let me know if this doesn't make sense. When there is no resistance, there is no experience actually as we know it. And this is taught in Buddhism. It's taught, I won't get into it too much, but through these levels of meditation, you can attain called the jhanas, which through samatha meditation, you slow down the mind, calm the mind, and fabrication can completely cease. And so you recognize that the world is actually built through resistance. It's similar to an image I've always have gotten is like, the wind can be blowing, but you don't know the wind is blowing unless it hits a mountain, it hits the trees, unless it hits your face. Other than that, like if it's not making a sound or you're feeling it, you have no idea that there's any wind around. And the same is true with reality. There has to be some resistance for anything to manifest. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we don't know it's there.
Right. If there's no friction,
yes,
there's no heat.
Yes.
And it's the friction itself, the tension that creates that heat, that energy.
And there's also, let's put it like this, when there's friction, there has to be quote unquote two things. There has to be something causing friction on another thing. And so actually we're creating duality through resistance, because I can't resist. Like, let's just put it like this. If subject and object merged into one, and that's, basically recognizing the subject is me, the viewer, the object is like the world. If we merge into one thing, there can be no friction. We need duality for experience to manifest. So interestingly, there is this play, this magic show of the mind through resistance, through friction, that is creating the Buddhist term would be like illusion of duality. And actually recognizing there's something really beautiful in that. So some people, again, can get this nihilistic, meaningless experience when we say that, the world is empty of inherent truth and inherent reality. It's built on certain qualities of mind. And when we recognize that, again, a lot of people enter that really dark nihilistic place where it's all meaningless. And that's actually not what's being taught there. It's not that it's completely meaningless. It's just that it is what you make it. So don't make it something meaningless, because that's actually, you're making an ultimate truth claim about reality, which it would not be empty. That would be a denial of emptiness. So if we're going to really inhabit this understanding of what emptiness is in its fullness and its nuance, we need to recognize, like, any experience of nihilism and meaninglessness would have to be built on a objective truth claim, which is basically the antithesis of emptiness. Emptiness states basically that there is no objective way that things are. There is no inherent existence to the world, to my sense of self. The Tibetan Buddhists say that things cannot exist from their own side. It requires you and your mind to interpret, what is this thing, this camera, this thing, Yehuda, like what is this? Your mind is interpreting data. Mm-hmm. And that is open to infinite interpretations, ultimately.
Yeah, I want to touch back on this idea of emptiness that you brought up, and I think we share in our faiths between Buddhism and Judaism the common idea that there's no duality, and that's the essence of the Shema prayer that I shared, that essence of oneness.
Yeah,
I don't think all other religions have that. Judaism is very careful not to even create a situation where there could be perceived duality.
Yeah,
That's why a very core principle of our religion is that there shall be no idols of any form, because the second you've given form to anything that is formless, you've created duality.
And you've separated yourself from the infinite, actually.
Yes.
That's the thing about the ineffable. There's a reason it's ineffable. If you try to put words to that which cannot be given, put into words, you're putting it in a box. That's what language does. The functional nature of language is that we get to, again, solidify it. This is a table. This is not a table. You know what I mean? There's a functional element to it. But when we're talking about these really deep truths about, what we could call God, what we could call void, we could call the infinite, and the zero, the nothingness all together, we really can't give it words. Yeah. And we need to recognize that. And we need to lead people, I think, honestly, to an experience of that wordless place, of that thing in Buddhism, at least Theravadan Buddhism, it's heavily emphasized, which is an experience of the deathless, this thing beyond birth and death. We can actually taste that in this human form. And that's what's so, inspiring to me, what's so trippy to me. And, for me, you can also ask the question, beyond language and concepts, what's going on right now? Just sit with that, and sit with that in meditation. Before we put words to this, before we put a word like present moment, like now, like Ben, Yehuda, like life, before those words, where are we? And you can have a very direct experience of this voidness, actually. And certain Tibetan teachers that I love say, here in the West, we have no relationship to the void. And that's actually the issue. Because we're so scared of death, and we're so scared of the ego death, and we identify only with the ego. It's not balanced. We need to recognize the other side of experience, which is yes, you are Yehuda, I am Ben. Yeah, sure, that's real at one level. But we need to know the deathless, the other level, where what we are is also non-conceptually speaking, void. And can we sink into that? And again, the ego will kick and scream, and because it'll know it's dying, actually. The solidity, the objective reality that we tend to experience surrounding the ego, that is what is kicking and screaming, because we've identified with the separate self. And then when everything is void, that includes the ego. So naturally, it's going to, again, kick and scream. So we can recognize that, hold that, allow that, love that, and let our eyes adjust to the void so that we're not afraid of it anymore. Because that's the thing. There's nothing inherently wrong with the void. It's just, again, our own resistance to something very different. Again, that's the thing. When we can let the eyes adjust to that emptiness, you realize, oh, wait, this is the place to be for sure. This is really liberating is the word. Because again, what happens to death when I see, oh, that's an empty story too? The story of life, that's an empty story. The story of separate me, empty story. And at that point, you're so deeply free. But again, in order to step into that and have that be a lived experience, it's I've heard teachers say, you either have to be insane or really trust your teacher. For me, I was cripplingly depressed and hated myself. So I was let me just jump into the void. Because what that implies is a really radical ego death of everything that we thought that we were, this separate sense of self. It has to die, and die permanently, actually. And when I was at the Zen centers in the Zen center in Vermont, the monastic academy, the teacher Soryu, he said this beautiful quote, which is, the path of Zen is actually the path of death. We are trying to have you as students die now while in life, because that's when you taste that void. Mm-hmm. If what I thought I was is dead, my ego, my separate self, when that is dead, I open up to everything that we've actually always been, the infinite. We open up to being all of creation, and actually beyond that, which is the formless and the deathless. And that is, it's giving me chills, because that's definitely the place to be. And then I can still be Ben, but I'm not trapped in Ben. I see Ben as a story. It's a beautiful experience, but I can just hop back into formlessness and really have that be equally as real. And at that point, you have so much malleability in your experience. Bro, you're free, liberated. And that's the thing. It can be taught. And I hope people hearing this can have some feeling in their body of like, whoa, this changes things. Or maybe they want to learn more, or maybe they're scared. And all of those reactions are completely natural and to be expected.
Yeah. In Judaism, there's this idea of the shattering of the vessels. So we talked before about there's orot v'kelim. Orot is the light. It's the energy of the world, and vessels are the bodies that contain them. Our body, our physical body, is a vessel for light that shines through as we experience the world. And there's all sorts, like I said to you earlier, a business can be a vessel from which light is transmitted and transmuted to create positive change in the world.
Yeah.
If that light just kind of descended into the world and was here, it wouldn't have form. It wouldn't have the same power, right? To then create physical, real change. In Judaism, the physical is so sacred and precious because it's the means by which we refine the world.
Yeah.
And the body is so sacred for that exact reason.
Yeah.
You don't identify with it in the this is mine. It's the opposite. Is I'm putting this body back in the earth as it is, and for this reason we don't cremate in Judaism. We don't none of that, because it's this body was here for a mission, and it's not mine to decide what I do with it. And there's other examples of that.
Right.
A story shift, and you've touched on this a little bit. I think that the story for many people, myself included at points, is that the world is exactly how it is. There's a past, a present, and a future. I live in this sliver of time. When I am gone, and the world continues on.
Right.
That's not, it's not that that's the problem, but the question is, how am I part of this process of creation? If Yehuda is existing only in this period of time, what is my role within the grander process of creation? And there's a prayer we say, it's part of a prayer every morning, and it says, we say, Mechadesh b'kol yom tamid ma'aseh b'rashit. We say that God renews the process of creation every single day and in every single moment. We are not in existence because the world is here, we came to be, and then we'll be gone. We are being created simultaneously with the world in every single moment. And if God didn't choose to create the world in this moment, there would be nothing. There'd be absolutely nothing. But it's not that we're so separate from that. It's not that we come up, we rise, and then we fall and we're gone and the world stays. No, we show up with every single moment of creation being created.
Yeah, exactly. So in a very, honestly, logical sense, like I said, the subject and the object, the self and the world that we view and experience, they come together. How could there ever be a self, a me, when there's no world? It doesn't make sense. There needs to be something for me to be relative to. And how could there be a world if there's no viewer? And if you just spend time with this, just understanding, really, you recognize I am completely inseparable from this place. What I am is the world, as much as it is this body. As much. And that's the thing, we identify with this, with being the viewer, not the viewed. Recognizing we can never separate the two, ever. We can never separate it. Even if it was in a dream-like, whatever, ethereal existence where it's not a material world as we know it, whatever we are experiencing is also you. It comes together. The viewer and the viewed, they can never be separate. And also I want to point to a notion in Buddhism is that ultimately we can actually never make the claim that when we die, the world will be here. When we're asleep, where's the world? When we're in deep dreamless sleep, where to go? And that's the question. How do we know when we're gone that the world will be here? It's actually an assumption. It's actually a story. And can we actually recognize that? And what's the impact then of, again, recognizing that all of these beliefs are stories? This is like, and this comes back to moving away from this notion of objective truth, actually. When I see it's all stories, and even the story that there is no story is going to have to be a story. we start to move away again from trying to find the ultimate objective truth, recognizing, oh, it's going to be fluid. It's going to have to be, at least when you hold emptiness. We're starting to get into very nuanced territory here, so it might be confusing or hard to understand, and that's actually probably by design. But so understanding that it's all stories, for me, the question moved away from what is really objectively real, because I was a seeker of truth. That's what I was like, I need to figure this shit out. Like, what's really good here? Growing up in the materialistic paradigm, I was like, that can't be it. So what is it? Went through all these traditions, and then Buddhism, which brings you back to your own mind, actually.
Mhm.
Always. It's like, not out there. Go back to yourself. Look closer. Slow down. Look closer. And so the main quest, I guess, the goal shifted from what's really objectively true to what is useful at this time. What is useful for my heart and for my mind in this moment right now? If it's all fluid, just first have that moment of mindfulness of what is the story operating? How is it affecting me? What is the impact? And do I need to believe it? And when I talk about shifting stories, where I can be all of creation, I can be beyond creation, everything can be empty, I can just be Ben. These are all options, and they lead to different experiences. Where what is required right now? Like when I'm macking on a shorty, like at the gym, I'm Ben. I'm Duff Daddy fucking 100, spiritual fuckboy in this bit. You know what I mean? But that's not me when I'm like in a very reverent place, in a very like in a cathedral, when I'm in the mountains, whatever, when I'm really having these shifts in perception. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not Ben. And can we have again, feel into the heart and the mind to see what's being called for at a given time.
And you probably wouldn't be satisfied with your life if you had a single story. I mean, no one is.
Right.
My dad calls it living the hyphen, because I went through a period in college where felt like I had so many different parts of my identity and who I'm becoming, who I was, who I am, and how do I stay true to everything? And so I was in college, I was in a fraternity, going to all these parties, but at the same time, I was like deepening my practice as a Jewish man. I was observing the Sabbath. I was more conscious of the romantic and sexual relationships.
Right.
And these are two worlds that feel so separate. But how do you live the hyphen? How do you be this version of yourself and honor this version? And how do you use both to the other's advantage? How do you take your strong Jewish practice, right? And all of that entails all the ideas we've been talking about, and bring it into that other setting, bring it into that other place, and use it to uplift. Yeah. And not say, no, that's not me anymore. I'm afraid of who I was. Yeah. I'm afraid of that Yehuda, because he doesn't have what I have now, right. What I know. Right. But to be able to walk between the two, to live the hyphen is a beautiful experience. Absolutely. And again, we get stuck in the just normal human mind thinking that there's a better and a worse here. There's a better Yehuda and there's a less good Yehuda. But actually, basically all the time, there's going to be pros and cons. And there might be more insight and understanding in a certain path, but that doesn't imply better or worse, actually. That means that you've actually figured something out, and it's more pleasant, maybe, to, again, be in your practice, to not get hammered and have meaningless sex. I'm not saying you were doing that, but that's like the frat lifestyle. So it's like, again, it might be more pleasant, but it doesn't mean good or bad. And I think that's the thing we have to get away from, is like recognizing there's pros and cons here, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. There's nothing wrong you could ever express. And we get so caught up in this like duality, this black and white. And I think, again, just recognizing, what are the stories here? Not just the stories, but what's the lived experience here? And like you said, there's so much freedom to being able to be many things, where, again, I think a lot of people try to really seek for a solid identity. I'm a rock climber. I'm a business person. I'm a millionaire. I'm a festival person. Whatever people tend to identify with, not really realizing that we don't need those identifications. Mm-hmm. What we really are doesn't need them. But our small, separate ego needs some solid ground to stand on. Because the ego is like, who am I?
And something in us actually already knows that that ego is not as real as it would like to be, and it will never be. But that ego, when we're operating from that, is like, oh, am I a rock climber, or am I a Jew? Am I a Christian? Am I Buddhist? What am I? And that's for me, like at the root of Buddhism, coming to this emptiness. Like, although Buddhism has transformed my life permanently, I would say I don't even call myself a Buddhist, because it's like too tight for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's just another label. And I think, when we get into those dogmas, that's even the dogma, again, that there is no dogma, for instance, like, just to bring it full circle, they can be dangerous. You know what I mean? Because I'm rejecting the emptiness of experience and building these solid belief systems that can then counter each other. And when two solid belief systems like hit each other, things can explode and shatter. If everything's fluid, it's like water on water. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
there also is something problematic about rejecting that there are belief systems and living only in emptiness, because then in some way you're clinging to this idea of emptiness. Yes. And we do live in a world with real stories being told, with division among peoples, because every group has their own story. Every hobby that someone could be a part of, that's an identity, that's a story. And to say that doesn't exist is to resist it.
And it's silly. Like, it's obviously silly. Like, for me, it's like, of course there's a Ben, of course there's a Yehuda. In relative functioning experience, like, yes, we need to solidify things, and we don't want to be afraid of that. And this is where, like, the conversation I have with Charity, like with you, with many people, like, it seems like it's either, it's everything's empty or it's solid. And what's so trippy is actually we can have a third option there, where it's both. And that doesn't make any sense at first. But it's like, we have this, like you said, this need for solidity. And it would be silly to say that we don't. Because, of course, like, we're operating in the world, and I'm having, again, quote unquote, real experiences happening that are being solidified unconsciously by my mind. And that's not bad. It's the way I see it. Emptiness is just a tool. Mm-hmm. It's a way of seeing that we can pick up and put down. And the image I get is emptiness can function sort of like an Etch-a-Sketch. Like, you're shaking up reality and it starts to all disappear. Mm-hmm. And it's really useful. But you can never live in emptiness, because what's there? you can't say.
I think as we continue this conversation, we're moving from like these very deep and profound ideas into how do you craft your own story.
Yep.
I think that's very valuable to understand for us and for anyone listening, because it's how do you take these empty ideas, in a way, they're formless, they're light, whatever we want to call it, and give them form, give them story. So there's a song, do you know the Strokes?
I've heard of them, yeah.
So there's a line in one of their songs, and it says, "No, it's not wrong, but it's not right." Mm. And I love this because, yes, it's true that there may be nothing wrong about the story that you're living. To say it's wrong is it is. It's not wrong. It is.
Yeah.
But it's not wrong, but it's not right. So if you realize that you're in that in-between area, you can start to move towards what feels right.
Yep.
It's the same idea with there is only God energy in this world. There's no place where that is not existing. Let's call it the wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's not right. Maybe there is darkness in the world. Maybe there is concealed light among many, many, many layers. Yeah. So how do we move towards right? Because I do think that there is, when you come to that idea of oneness, to the idea of just pure light, pure essence, that can be an absolute that you strive for. Mm-hmm. That can be something that you aspire towards.
Yeah. And in Buddhism, they say that the deathless should be known, but again, you can't live there. And what's interesting is when we're in that emptiness, when we're empty of solid solidity, a solid world, it's all transparent and the light can shine freely. And then when we start to create new worlds, the word that I've heard used before is cosmopoesis, creating new worlds. When we start to solidify certain beliefs or senses of self, uh, you can rearrange that light in any way you see fit. And for me, there's something very mystical there, where who is doing the arranging? Who are you that is creating the new world? And in a sense, it's like really trippy. I'm getting chills because you could say the creator themselves, when I'm not solidifying a thing called Ben. Who is creating the worlds? Who is creating the story? Who is solidifying abstract conceptual experiences into a solid experience of a world?
Right. And you're just in partnership with creation.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to flow with it. The image I get is like you're on a raft on a river, and like the river's going, but you have this like rudder you can sort of steer with and hit certain lines, So I want to bring this to, how do we pragmatically apply this very, in a sense, heady and far out teaching, which is emptiness, to be useful for ourselves, and just planting the seed. And no one should just believe me that everything's empty. That'd be silly. Basically, what I'm saying is that reality isn't real. And at first glance, that seems fucking insane, obviously. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm experiencing it. How could it not be real? What I'm saying is just pay closer attention, actually. And notice maybe how is my specifically resistance to experience constructing an experience of solidity. And if we want to rewrite our story, for instance, so many people struggle with trauma in the past, or the fear of death, the fear of not being good enough, whatever. We struggle with those stories and we think we can just bypass them. We think, oh, let me just rewrite it. I'll just journal it out and it'll be real now. But if you've ever tried that, it doesn't work. It can make a little bit of a difference, but you still fall into that same habitual, just the momentum of the current story. So the way to do this is actually paradoxically to completely accept and love your reality, your lived experience as it is right now. I get the image of a Chinese finger trap, where the more you try to pull your fingers apart, the more I'm trying to resist my lived experience right now, the tighter and more solid it gets. Interesting, because I'm resisting it in a very subtle way, where I'm saying, let me just bypass this. Why? Because you're resisting it. That's not actually love. So, the more we resist, the more we solidify. And then the more we love, interestingly, the more malleable and fluid and less real our stories get. So again, it's a complete paradox, and this is where psychotherapy comes in, actually. Pretty clutch sometimes. I think that the psychotherapeutic paradigm is really limited, but the goal that I see is actually, let's learn how to love all of our experience, the world as it is, all the quote-unquote evil. Can we love that? Can I accept that? Can I see that as a face of God, even if they're looking away from the light? And can I love that? The world as it is, myself as it is, death as it is, so that it can all dissolve. So all of a sudden, when I've really loved everything just as I am, and it's very simple. So many people want to complexify things. It's just like, again, relax and open to what's here. And just be honest. If I'm dealing with trauma, yes, we can work with the narrative, but first you have to completely accept it and not accept the trauma as a means of actually changing it. That's still subtle resistance, and you won't be able to get to that dissolution. You have to completely accept this is how my life is. And that's what happened for me in India, is when I hated myself. I couldn't speak to people. I couldn't look people in the eyes. I was so depressed. Eventually, what broke for me is like, fuck it. I guess I'm just depressed forever. I guess I just can't connect with people, and I guess I'll just like work at a gas station. And it was that acceptance that all of a sudden, like, the doorway to heaven opened. It doesn't make sense to me. It's still so like, it's like a complete paradox, where it reminds me of Dante's Inferno, which is like a beautiful story that ends with like, the way to get out of hell is to crawl through Satan's mouth. So how, for me, was I supposed to accept the fact that I'm a loser? I don't have a job. I'm gonna have to move in with my parents. This is when I was hella depressed, like years ago. How do I accept that? And it was like, eventually I just realized I had no choice. And it was not even conceptual. It was like everything in my body just opened. And it was like, I'm yours. I completely surrender. Do with me whatever you will. And I just like, and with that, that's when you get the keys. that's when something really opens. So again, to bring it back to how we rewrite stories, accepting your story, your experience, your feelings exactly as they are. And from that place, if you keep leaning into, where can I accept more? Where can I love more? Where can I just be with life as it is? Not as a means to change it, but actually as a means to meet our pain, to alchemize it so that it dissolves. And then from that radical dissolution, that's when we can start to rebuild. And there's different levels to that, obviously. Some people are comfortable letting go of a little bit. Some people are comfortable letting go of a lot. If you want to get to that really profound emptiness that I'm speaking to, you have to let go of everything. And that means let go into it as it is right now. It's very simple. And then we can start to rework the story, the narrative, because we have that direct firsthand experience of the emptiness of it.
Just to share, that experience of acceptance is how I came up with that poem I shared.
Yeah.
I was confronting in meditation a lot of different beliefs about how I need to present myself to the world, what masks I need to wear in conversations with people, and that it needs to be coming from a place of, I may be confused and lost in life, maybe not okay certain days. As long as I can turn up the volume, as long as I can just radiate happiness and joy all the time, I'm good. That's all I have to show people is this polished version. And then I felt myself not go up to that happiness state, but come down to baseline and then descend below it.
Dude, yeah.
I dropped down and out, and I ended up not in the ocean, but as the ocean. And what the ocean was what it represented was the beauty, the music, the art, the poetry of these waves. I understood, oh, this isn't a curse. This isn't something to hide. This is a gift. This is the ingredients that the famous artists and musicians and poets of our world have used to create their work.
Totally.
And I flipped it on its head, and then this just came out. Boom. And that's the acceptance. That's the rewriting of the story.
Bro, you're giving me chills. And it's like, it's our inability to go into the darkness that is fucking everything up. It's like the soul creation wants to taste the fertility of that darkness. And there's nothing wrong with it. But little us, the conditioning that we're living in says, no, push it away. Let's get you some Xanax. Let's get you a vacation. Let's get you, you know what, take a mental health day. And it's like, no, creation wants to fucking suffer. It does. Because that's what, again, you can't have this. What would the sun be without the rain? You know what I mean? Like, we need the duality. We need night and we need life and death, like day and night, all of these things. And yet we push away one half of the dream. And when we push away and we resist, guess what? That pain, that darkness is going to amplify until you get the message and until you learn how to, again, open to it. And for me, that darkness, like, this sounds trippy, but I actually pray for it in a sense, because I know it's nourishment to the soul. The deepest parts of our being, yes, we want to chill in the light, but you can only, as they say, the branches can only stretch to heaven as far as the roots have stretched into hell. And you need that nourishment. We need to suck the fertile soil up through our roots. What's stretching into hell, that darkness, that pain, that depression, that is going to serve you. It's going to inform your life. It's going to add dimensionality. Like you said, where do the poems come from? The pain. Like, I always look at, like, all of the artists, like all the great artists, like Van Gogh cut his fucking ear off. Man was psycho, suffering. Like, Kurt Cobain blew his fucking head off. You know what I mean? These are artists. There's an archetype of the suffering artist who is, by design, is giving me chills because it's so true. Going into that darkness, their soul has taken them there. That is what they signed up for, is that pain. And I know people who are artists in my life who actually, like, again, it's like you can't stop them from going there. Like, whether it's physically or in their own mind, they will tap into that suffering. Why? Because it informs the beauty of this place and letting our soul alchemize that darkness into poetry, into art, into music, into service to the world. Like, would I be doing what I'm doing? Would I be trying to serve the world so deeply if I was not broken open by, like, an immense pressure of pain and darkness. And that's why I say pray for it. Because like when life gets a little too easy, dude, like you catch me running up mountains because I need some pain. I need some struggle. I need some depth.
Well, I think let's stop there. We saw the rabbit hole and jumped in head first with a kettlebell in our hands.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Skyrocketing
Just
right down.
straight in. But
Yeah.
I love that. And thank you for creating this conversation with me. I just recently revamped the podcast, and I see each of these episodes as just a living documentation of story and experience.
Yeah.
And you know, like this conversation was made in partnership with creation, and it's forever in existence. And so I hope anyone who's listening just takes it to the heart and can take some of these things and help rewrite their own story.
Yeah, no, my man, I really appreciate you having me on, and I can't wait to dive into more topics. And like, again, just like touching on the connection between Buddhism and Judaism, like we've just skimmed the surface, and I'm really excited to dive more into it with you. And you have such a great mind, my man, and I hear you, and it's trippy. I see myself in you. How old are you?
23.
23, bro. Okay, cool. That's interesting because I see a lot of myself in you. Just hearing your story of like, you know, doing the frat type shit and then being like, man, this is not quite for me. This isn't it. And so I already see that consciousness kind of purifying. And it's so cool to like witness you on this path and to see you stepping into this and to having these conversations. And yeah, I would love to do more sometime soon. I would love to have you on my podcast as well.
Yeah,
so.
I'd love to come on.
Cool.
We can have a part 2.
Sick. Cool.
All right, y'all. Well, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you take courage from this conversation to really face that shadow within you, to peel back the shell layers of whatever's concealing your inner light so that you can make a fucking dent in the universe.
Yeah. Amen, brother.